Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today's program is the second of two episodes highlighting the outstanding exhibition, Learning with Trees, Artists and Ecologies of Connection. Organized with Tree Boston, this engaging and thought-provoking exhibition brings together artists whose diverse practices explore the many ways trees shape our understanding of community, memory, environmental stewardship, place, and our relationship with one another. Through painting, photography, sculpture, installation, and other creative approaches, these artists encourage us to slow down, observe more carefully, and reconsider the connections that bind us to the natural world and to each other. We're especially pleased to be joined by the exhibition's curator, Martina Tanga, John Colan, founder and director of HallSpace in Dorchester, and seven of the extremely talented artists whose work is included in the exhibition. Emily Auchincloss, Clint Baclawski, Jane Marsching, Yuko Oda, Kendall Reiss, Cristi Rinklin, and Sarah Slavick. Together, we'll explore the ideas behind their work, their creative processes, and how art can deepen our understanding of ecology, independence, and our shared responsibility for the environment. We'll also discuss the unique collaboration that has brought this exhibition to HallSpace and the conversations it hopes to inspire throughout the community. Let's start by meeting our guest and hear all about Learning with Trees, Artists and Ecologies of Connection. Welcome. So delighted you're all able to be here. Had the wonderful opportunity to visit the exhibition over the weekend, chat a little with John. Really enjoyed what I had the opportunity to see, had me thinking a lot after I left the exhibition. So eager to find out more and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, Martina, I think it would be of interest to just start by having you share what first inspired the idea for the exhibition.
Oh, thank you for having us, Jay. This is a big group, but we can do it all on Zoom. And I'm so glad that the artists are here to also talk about their work. This is an exhibition that has been percolating in my mind for a very long time. It's started a little bit in the pandemic, and I was out walking a lot with my dog, and I started reading Ben Rowling's The Moving Tree Line, which is a book about climate change and how trees are migrating to adapt to climate change. And I really realized that I had little connection to even the trees in my neighborhood.
Hmm.
And so I started being so fascinated and thinking about, we often have sort of a green blindness, and these incredible beings fall in our backdrop of our busy daily lives. So I started connecting with trees in my neighborhood,
Hmm.
learning what they were. And as I sort of made the loop every day, saw the seasons change and just became much, much more aware. And from there, I sort of, a lot of the friends on the call here, I sort of either knew vaguely or, but, started connecting to artists who had similar intentions and similar sort of, you know, desires and thoughts to connect with the natural world, and found that I was rich in friends in the Boston area on this front, and so started making studio visits and having incredible conversations. So there's a real richness of thought partners and green friends in the Boston area. So that's how the sort of exhibition came together.
And how did your partnership with Tree Boston begin?
Yes, I know you're talking to them in the next episode. David, I was inspired by the work that they do, their philosophy, their building of a sort of really community outreach, a philosophy built on reciprocity of creating relationships between humans and trees in the natural world. And we had a Zoom call. This was about 2 years ago now. We're both inspired by exhibitions that had been, focused on trees, and one particularly at the Fondation Cartier in Paris in 2019. And we both happened to have the catalogue by our desk. So we immediately felt a connection there. We pulled up the catalog and we were like, yes, we both want to organize something like this in Boston. And that's how that friendship came about.
And why was HallSpace an optimal partner for this exhibition?
Well, firstly, John is an incredibly kind and generous person. I met him a few years ago, interested in his exhibition programming. And then I thought of him particularly because Tree Boston is also in Dorchester. So it really brings place the initiatives of art making, artists, and the natural environment of Dorchester, the initiatives that Tree Boston is doing, greening that area of Boston together, and it just made perfect sense. And then, as you saw from last week's edition, there's that other sort of site show in at Boston City Hall where we make the connection through just practice textile work of Dorchester. So there's sort of a inside outside relationship. So it just worked out so perfectly.
I mean, we're going to hear from the artist shortly, but what are some of the common threads that connect the participating artists?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, trees is the common thread, and how each of the artists, it's not just sort of representation of trees, but how each of the artists approach trees as a relational subject and want to participate in, quite literally learning with trees. So it's really about decentering our human selves and thinking about how trees exist in the world, how they relate to one another, how they communicate, how they thrive and the habitats that they make. So a lot of the common threads are thinking about trees' age and how they live about 500 years, so 5 times longer than humans, and how they relate to time, how they communicate with each other, how they create reciprocal relationships with other living beings, like the mycorrhizal network, which is really predicated on cooperation rather than competition. So they model for us, I think, a lot of ways of being that are, very inspiring for us humans right now, especially as we find ourselves, with enormous challenges for existence in the future.
Thank you. John, welcome. Could you briefly share what inspired you to start Hall Space and how it's evolved over the years, please?
Hello, thank you, and thank you everyone for being here and being so nice. Um, well, the gallery was never about me. I named it Hall Space, and it was a hallway originally in another building, and so I was there for a couple of years, and then I was in Roxbury for a few more years, and I've been here for since 2006. And I've just maintained the name Hall Space the whole time. I've always been a gallery that was focused on the artists and the different work that they have. And a lot of times it's about artists that don't have a lot of commercial recognition. And I've always had an opening for different curators and people to propose a show of some sort. And Martina had a very compelling offer, and I thought it was interesting. I've had a lot of artists that show, and the themes of their work has always been about the environment and different forms. And so that's kind of it. My kind of like mantra is to do nothing that harms the artist. You know, the artist is the most important person here, and so I try to keep it that way the whole time. I just have one thing I'd like to say out loud that doesn't have anything to do with this group. But artist Karen Moss, who was a very well-known artist in the Boston area, passed away last week. And she was a very big supporter of HallSpace. And we've been good friends for many, many years. She lived in Brookline and other places, but if anybody here knows her, they all know Karen Moss, and I just want to send my um, thanks for her.
I appreciate you adding that. Just a quick thought for time's sake. What struck you most as you explored the work that's on display now at HallSpace?
I actually I didn't see it until it was very close to the show, and Martina provided like a roadmap of how the exhibition could be installed, which is a lot easier than what usually goes on here. But I thought it was a very good proposal. I thought it was very well thought out. The work was really interesting to me right off the bat. And I just went with the flow, go with the flow on this one.
How have visitors responded so far?
Well, everyone seems to really like the show. I think people don't always tell you exactly what they think, but you get a sense about how they are when they come in and they smile and they want to talk about something about the work and the trees or whatever it is. I think trees, I mean, who doesn't like a tree? I mean, and it's part of like the world is like in this crazy state and we're overheating and we just need more trees. And so just to come in and have a fresh look at different work.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Moving on to the work that's on display. Yuko, would you please begin and just share a little bit about what visitors can look forward to that you've contributed to the exhibition, please?
Yes. Hi, Jay, and hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you all, and thank you for this conversation. I have two pieces in this group exhibition. One is called Tender Might, and it is a larger watercolor drawing. I'd like to call it drawing because it is on paper. And the imagery is of a interconnected ecosystem between fungus, a beetle, and a tree. And so tender might uh, signifies the power of a rhino beetle that sprouts a magnolia tree from its horn. And this power is derived from the decay and the power of the fungus that is growing on the ground. So it incorporates decay and generation of life. And so I see it sort of as interconnectedness and also cycles of life within one system. The second, uh, go ahead, Jay.
No, just curious what the inspiration was behind either this or the next piece that you're going to share.
Um, well, I've been working with the themes of interconnectedness within nature for many years, and
Mhm.
just how organisms perhaps mutate or interconnect to survive in this climate crisis. And it is sort of a dystopian but hopeful and beautiful world that is perhaps post-human. So yes, there's a lot of artists and films that I've been very inspired by. And then the second piece is more of an experimental piece called Cosmos Pollen 2. And this piece allows the viewer to move between imagery of the microscopic pollen and fibers of the paper itself. So when you look at the image of the drawing, you can see that it's pollen on the uh, uh, enlarged in a 100 times scale. But then when you look at the artwork, it is paper fibers mounted on glass with plastic. So there's kind of an interplay between the imagery and the materiality of the work.
Thank you very much. Sarah, welcome. A few words about your contribution to the exhibition, please.
Hi, thanks everybody. Thank you, Jay, for holding this conversation and everybody for being here. Well, this piece called Elegy to the Underground number 6, or Diptych Elegy, is part of a larger body of work that I've been doing for many years now. I can't remember when I started, sorry, but I've done a series of pieces called Elegy to the Underground, both on paper and on canvas. And this came out of some of the same concerns that Yuko has expressed and that I see in a lot of the work in the exhibition, but sort of a grieving of the natural world, climate change leading to extreme weather and climate refugees, the destruction of biodiversity and ecosystems. But this body of work in particular came out of thinking about what happens underground. Obviously, trees are critical for our survival above ground and provide oxygen and all of that. But being the artist that I am, I've been mostly an abstract artist, and I've been always interested in things that are unseen or hidden or things that I could imagine, but also in interconnectedness. And those are ideas that I've brought into my work in many ways over many years. I think it's fitting that my work here is of what's underground. And I think much of what goes on in the root systems of trees is still a mystery. And these are kind of invisible worlds. And I think they're rich for me as an artist to invent and create. And I want to create wonder and reverence, but also a sense of urgency. We all have heard recently about this mycorrhizal network and how it's really a social network that trees engage in and social behaviors that communicate with each other and support each other. And as Martina elegantly said, it's not competition, it's cooperation. So I see this as a kind of metaphor for how we could behave and sort of learning from trees to help us to be behaving in a similar way.
Terrific, terrific, and definitely a great tie-in to the title of the exhibition, indeed. Clint, welcome. Please share a few words about your contribution.
Thanks again, Jay, for hosting this great event. My work really was born out of the book that Martina mentioned, The Tree Line by Ben Rollins. I've been really thinking about that moving tree line, and it started in the book in Scotland. And I remembered 10 years earlier, I photographed this amazing forest in the Scottish Highlands, and it's literally of the tree line that they first discussed in the book, the Scots pine. And I've been working with these new scrolls that are first originated from advertising displays. So it literally is a picture, scrolling through various images. And I adapted that from my artwork a few years ago. And thinking about that book and with my scroll work, I found a way to adapt to make a custom site-specific installation in the corner of the room. So it's of these pine trees, and they're literally moving through. And as it moves, it morphs into a really obscure, almost like a pixelated image of red. Then it goes to clear. So the image literally evaporates in front of you, and you see right through it to a gradient on the background. Um, so it's really about that book and in reference to this great exhibition that Martina curated. So,
It's a wonderful, wonderful, and another example of just the wide range of creativity among the group of artists and their contributions. Thank you. Cristi, welcome. Would you please share a few words about your contribution to the exhibition?
Yeah, thank you, Jay, so much. And I just want to say how excited I am to be in this exhibition. Yuko and Kendall and I were in the first iteration of this show in Rome last year, which was fantastic. And when Martina wanted to bring this to Boston and then make it even more expansive and include some of my favorite artists. I was just really excited to continue to be a part of this. So I have two paintings in the show. Thicket, right behind John's head, and on I guess on our left, and then Forever in Suspension on the right. And so when I think about trees in the natural world, and a lot of my work does center around images of trees in some capacity. I think similarly to Yuko in a lot of ways, this idea of a post-human or a decentered human perspective, decentralizing the human perspective. And I think a lot about how we, how do we kind of reconfigure or kind of like rematerialize memory of something that is no longer there. So when I'm painting, I'm thinking about this idea of a rematerialized memory of something that is no longer available to us in the reality that we currently live in. So there's a lot of things that I do to the paintings that make them feel like they're very otherworldly, that they're being viewed by some kind of like lens or some kind of um, filtering system so that we are not witnessing this as we would, with our own eyes.
Mm,
And that it's becoming something else. And I'm also really interested in this idea of the uncanny in nature and that the natural world has consciousness, that it has agency, that it makes decisions, and acts upon us. And we a lot of times like to think of ourselves as ones who control nature or corral nature or try to somehow or another, make it kind of work within our experiences and boundaries. And there's a lot of, I think there's a lot that's been written and a lot that's been, kind of thought about and imagined about the natural world actually making decisions upon us.
thank
So,
you.
yeah.
Unfortunately, for the sake of time, we're going to move on. Emily, a few words about your contributions.
Thank you, Jay. And I'm really grateful to be in this show and here with all of you, many of whom I'm lucky to know and work with. I was asked by Martina to participate in this show at the same time as I had started to embark on a new way of working with the materials that I tend to work with. I work with a lot of natural dye, DYE, in my own explorations, and I also use and tend to use silk fabric, and silk material, along with being a weaver and having other modalities. I had been thinking about making a book of some of the silk that I had dyed, and it seemed like a perfect fit for slowing down in terms of tempo, in terms of rhythm, and even in the sequence of a book itself. How you experience a book is something, for me at least, that centers me, helps me to stay present in the moment and be there with the materiality of the book and the information that I'm receiving. And I have created three books made of silk and natural dye for this show. They're called Color Story 1, Color Story 2, and Color Story 3. Um, the first one is made from a invasive, because invasive is a debatable word, tree called amur cork, which has this fantastically yellow material inside it called berberine. In fact, Cristi Rinklin's husband was the one who sourced this material for me. Thank you, Andy. And it creates an electric yellow, truly chartreuse almost. And so my first book is just really a celebration of that color alongside material from dyed with avocado. So it's a play on the colors of yellow.
Emily, we're going to
Yeah.
have to leave your introduction, encourage people to follow up with a visit to the exhibition, because we'd like to hear, Jane, your thoughts about your contribution, please.
Thank you, Jay. I'll join everybody in thanking you and all the artists. I'll be brief. I'll say that I'm going to refer back to Martina's calling out of the ways of being that trees embody. And that's what I'm trying to bring us into relationship with in my three pieces. So they're pieces of paper that are dyed with ink that I've made from the trees. And they are laser cut with scores that are invitations into wildness in the case of crabapple, into power in the case of ash trees, and into hope with the case of ginkgo trees. And those are all trees that are just around the neighborhood of the gallery and the park next door and street trees.
Yeah.
So I could say more, but that's really the simplest thing that the work is trying to do is bring us into relationship with these trees as kin and in whatever way we can somatically and imaginatively.
Thank you. Really appreciate the local connection you made with your contribution. Thank you. Kendall, please, a few thoughts about your various contributions to the exhibition.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Jay. And just an honor to be among artists and curators, gallerists I really respect. So appreciate the offer to chat today. My work in the show, Learning with Trees, is really focused on two ancient sort of species and family of tree that are related themselves. It's the magnolia and tulip trees, which are both indigenous to this area. I have a background and undergraduate degree in geology, and so time, as Martina mentioned, plays a really important role in the work, and as does the cyclical nature of trees and their annual life cycles, which I've been following closely, much like Jane, in places very close to where my studio is located in Bristol, Rhode Island. So I've made friends with some of these trees, and they continue to be collaborators pretty much daily. So the pieces in the show are really part of a larger project I call Being with Trees. But these pieces specifically are kind of installation based, and the title is Objects for the End of the World, which again, maybe to Yuko's point, could be sort of dire, but also hopefully hopeful in some way. A lot of it focuses on seeds, and so what we might need in order to grow in the future. Many of the pieces are kiln cast glass works, and there's also some carved wood pieces as well. And those trees, the wood in particular, relates to climate specifically, and the way that they came down in a microburst storm about a year ago. So there's a deep connection there to thinking about location in the environment.
Thank you very much. Martina, in closing, when visitors leave the exhibition, what's one question or reflection you hope stays with them?
Well, I hope they will want to sort of become more curious about the trees and plant life in their homes and, kind of local environments. Become involved with Tree Boston would be a great way for them to sort of have an action, an activity beyond the exhibition. And yes, and to sort of be more curious, to keep follow up on each of these artists' work and and to live more sort of consciously and reflectively in their lives.
Terrific, terrific. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank all of you again so much for taking the time to be here, for giving us a little background information about all the contributions in the exhibit, definitely encouraging us to go visit the exhibition up until August 14th at HallSpace. And want to end by wishing you continued success with future endeavors.
Thank you.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.